Sarah T.L. writes in and says to me, Dan, I've read some of your good faith stupidity in the internet essays, and it must be very frustrating for you to have to deal with people who don't know what they're doing or saying and having to explain the most obvious things to them. What do you think was the incident out of all of them or anything else you haven't written about which most exemplifies this frustration you have with people? Well, thanks for the question. Um, there are lots of things. I find it mostly disappointing. I don't get angry at it. I've written stuff about people like Bob Grumman, who's a nutty guy who just writes these mathemaku, which is uh, words that are mixed with mathematical symbols that have no real poetic inspiration to them. There was the time I wrote about Carlo Parcelli, a guy who had sent me back and then started writing nasty stuff about me online. There was other websites where I had stuff posted and they were the most popular pages, but they were taken down. Uh, I did. Uh, they shoot. They shoot movies, don't they? That website. Mine. This was before it became well known for its list of 1,000 best films or whatnot. The guy who had the website loved my stuff. Supposedly said it was most popular pages at the time, a decade or so ago. But his girlfriend didn't like my opinion, so he took it down, or so he claimed. There was a website called No Ripcord that I was sending stuff to, and I was being stalked by trolls from the Empire site after the Roger Ebert thing he did on me. So I had criticized one of the other critics on there, this kid named Grant Phipps, because his opinions were so childish and they were so off the rack. And the guy who ran the No Ripcord site, even though I was uh, brought there by another fellow who then left that site, I think he had some problems with the guy who ran the site. The guy said I shouldn't be criticizing uh, a critic on the website when I replied to him. And this is like, are you fucking kidding me? You have to criticize bad stuff when it comes. That's the only way a critic will learn. But probably the most inane one was a website called newcritics.com back around 06, 07. It was supposedly trying to evoke the new criticism of the mid 20th century where you could have objective standards. So I wrote a few pieces there. And similarly, I had written something on the website after there was some mention of the Who and the Pete Townsend pedophilia scandal of the early O's when Pete Townsend was found with loads of pornography on his desktop, child pornography, gay male pornography, and he was accused of being a pedophile, and he claimed that he had been abused, and this is why he was downloading. He was doing his own personal investigation. So it was obvious, that there was a lot of sick shit going on, and I think a year or so later there was something where Townsend, the cop who had arrested Townsend, had quit the force because he had been told by the Queen or someone higher up that since Townsend had just been knighted, they weren't going to pursue the investigation. So he wrote some book or some expose about it, and I said, how can you go on defending Townsend for downloading all this porno? It's illegal to download child pornography, no matter what his supposed reasons. And the guy who had this New Critics website said, I consider Pete Townsend a friend of the website. Not that he knew Pete Townsend, he was just a fanboy. And so he banned me for even mentioning the fact that there had been a scandal with Townsend, the child pornography, and this cop. So that's, this is part of the problem, is that people like to remove themselves from reality, remove themselves from the things that are out there. Art is supposed to be the great translator of reality, and yet you have these websites where people want to just voice their own petty obsessions, these obsessions that don't even have any skill behind them, whether it's a Bob Grumman and his mathemaku, or these websites that take down stuff of mine simply because I dare to criticize someone else who's writing for the website. And so this is one of the reasons I've learned to not work with other people. I'd worked for a site called Monsters and Critics for a while. That's where I got the idea for my Dan Schneider interviews, the written stuff. I did 2 with them before moving it over to my website and quit. My wife Jessica worked for them for a couple of years, but they were just a shit site that just foisted the same pop cultural crap over and again, and looking to make some kind of money. I think they're still online, but they're not as popular as they once were. But anyway, that's basically it, and that's the reason. And thanks for your question.